Everyone is celebrating this morning. The ceasefire is real. The Strait of Hormuz is open again. Oil prices are falling. Asian stock markets jumped 5% overnight. Politicians on 3 continents are claiming victory. And if you search Dubai right now, the first thing you will find is optimism. Hotels reopening, flights resuming. The idea that the worst is over and the city is about to bounce back the way it always has? I want to talk to you about something more uncomfortable than the ceasefire. I want to talk about what happens to a city when the crisis that exposed its vulnerabilities ends, but those vulnerabilities do not. Because here is what nobody is saying clearly enough today. The Strait of Hormuz was not Dubai's problem. It was the event that made Dubai's problem impossible to ignore. And now that the strait is reopening, there's a very real risk that the conversation closes before the deeper questions get answered. This video is for people who want those questions answered. And if that is you, let me walk you through what actually happened, what the data shows, and what a 2-week ceasefire cannot fix. Dubai was, for 2 decades, one of the most audacious urban experiments in human history. A city built almost entirely on the idea that if you remove enough friction, enough bureaucracy, enough taxation, enough red tape, and replace all of it with infrastructure and ambition and climate-controlled shopping malls, you can attract the world's most mobile people and capital and turn that flow into a self-sustaining economy. The pitch worked. Nearly 20 million international visitors arrived in 2024 alone. Property prices rose 60% between 2022 and early 2025, one of the strongest real estate runs of any major city on Earth. January 2026 recorded the equivalent of $15 billion in residential property transactions in a single month. Dubai was not just surviving, it was accelerating. And then, on February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched coordinated strikes on Iran. The supreme leader was killed. Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz, and within 48 hours, everything that Dubai had spent 2 decades building was stress-tested in real time. Hotel booking cancellations ran at 60% of existing reservations within the first week. Group bookings, conferences, incentive travel, destination weddings, those hit 80% cancellation rates for events scheduled in March and April. Europe's largest travel company suspended all Dubai-inclusive packages. The stock exchanges in Dubai and Abu Dhabi suspended trading, an unprecedented step for UAE regulators. 80% of scheduled flights were canceled. Jebel Ali Port, one of the largest container terminals in the world, halted normal operations. And hotel occupancy in a city where rooms were selling at $600 a night just weeks earlier dropped to somewhere between 15 and 20%. Those are not numbers from a slow-moving downturn, and that is near total paralysis in the span of a week. And here's the part that matters for understanding what happens next. Over 70% of the food that enters the UAE travels through the Strait of Hormuz. Yet 52% of the country's drinking water comes from desalination plants powered by energy infrastructure that Iran threatened directly. The city built for abundance was, in the space of a few days, confronting the physical limits of what a city with almost no agricultural land, almost no fresh water, and almost no domestic energy production can endure when the waterway that supplies it is blocked. Drone debris hit areas of Dubai. Missiles were intercepted over the city. The UAE government intercepted over 1,500 drones and hundreds of ballistic missiles in the first 2 weeks of the conflict. The physical safety of the city was never genuinely in doubt for most of that period, but the psychological safety was obliterated. And for a city whose entire economic model depends on people choosing to be there when they have other options, the psychological safety is the product. Tourism Economics, one of the leading research firms in global travel, projected that between 23 and 38 million fewer people would travel to the Middle East in 2026. The estimated daily revenue loss across tourism-related sectors in the Gulf ran to approximately $600 million per day, daily, for 40 days. Those numbers compound in ways that do not simply reverse when a ceasefire is announced. This is where the story becomes more important than the headline. Because the ceasefire changes the supply side of the equation. It opens the strait. It allows fuel prices to begin normalizing. It gives airlines a pathway back to restoring capacity. And the International Air Transport Association said, on the day the ceasefire was announced, that even with the strait open, it will take months for jet fuel supplies and prices to stabilize. And shipping experts were quick to note that the backlog at Hormuz on Ceasefire Day was approximately 1,000 vessels, with roughly 80% still stranded inside the Persian Gulf. At the pace of coordination with Iranian military forces, analysts at the trade intelligence firm Koppler estimated that only 150 to 210 ships would be able to transit during the entire 2-week ceasefire window. That means the bulk of the backlog remains in place when the deal expires. The strait is open. The congestion is not resolved. But even if you accept the most optimistic version of the logistics recovery, the ceasefire does almost nothing for the demand side. And Dubai's problem is fundamentally a demand problem. Let me be precise about something because this matters. The 3 populations that live in Dubai do not experience this crisis the same way, and collapsing them into a single narrative makes you misread what recovery actually means. The ultra-wealthy and high-net-worth investors, the people Dubai has spent the last 5 years aggressively courting with golden visas and tax structures and luxury real estate, these are the people most insulated from what happened. Dubai attracted $63 billion in private wealth migration in 2025. That capital did not evaporate the moment the first missile was intercepted. Physical property prices across Dubai fell 4 to 7% during the conflict. Not the 30 to 40% collapse you see in listed developer stocks. The people with assets in Palm Jumeirah or downtown Dubai lost paper value, not the fundamental attractiveness of the underlying asset relative to what they would hold elsewhere. Capital at the top of the pyramid moves slowly, and it had nowhere obviously better to go. For this group, the ceasefire is good news and the story is largely over. For the mid-tier professional class, the expats on 2 to 3 year contracts, the consultants and managers and marketing directors who came to Dubai because the salary arbitrage made sense and the lifestyle was compelling, the calculus is more complicated. A number of multinational firms with robust business continuity plans asked employees to evacuate their families as an immediate precaution during the conflict. And several companies moved to reduced salary arrangements, 15 days pay per month rather than 30, citing operational uncertainty. The question for this group was never will Dubai survive. It was whether Dubai still makes sense for me specifically. When I am making 30% less than expected, my family is somewhere else. And I can now see with complete clarity that the city has no permanent residency pathway, no civic claim on my loyalty, and no institutional mechanism that would treat me as anything other than a temporary revenue unit if things went badly enough. That question does not go away because a ceasefire was announced in Islamabad. And then there is the third group, the one that receives the least attention in the analysis. Over 92% of the UAE workforce is made up of foreign workers, the vast majority from South and Southeast Asia. There are approximately 4.5 million Indian nationals living in the UAE, nearly 38% of the total population. The International Labor Organization has documented for years the structural vulnerabilities of this workforce, the dependency on employer sponsorship, the limited legal protections, the reality of workers living 8 to a room and sending money home to families they see once every 2 years. During this conflict, over 220,000 Indian nationals were repatriated from the Gulf region. Not temporary tourists, residents, workers, people who had made their lives in the region and left under conditions they did not choose. A woman named Daffodils Guevara, a Filipino doctor who had lived in Dubai for nearly 20 years and who described the city as the place where she overcame her fear and built a better life, told National Public Radio that even in the middle of the conflict, she could not simply go home. That is the invisible architecture of Dubai's workforce. Not people who are there because they chose it in some clean and reversible way, but people whose economic reality is structured around staying, even when the logic of staying becomes very hard to defend. The ceasefire does not change the terms of that architecture. It does not create new legal protections. It does not create permanent residency pathways. It does not change the reality that these workers produce the physical city that the global marketing machine sells to everyone else. Now I want to talk about something that was true before the first missile was ever launched. Because the conflict was a catalyst, but the vulnerabilities it exposed were structural. and they were documented before any of this began. Rent in Dubai for a one-bedroom apartment in a central location had reached the equivalent of $28,000 per year by late 2025. Salary growth across the emirate was running well below rent inflation. The Mercer Cost of Living Index had tracked the UAE moving from the 90th most expensive destination for expatriates in 2013 to the 31st in 2023. A decade-long compression of the salary-to-cost advantage that had made Dubai attractive to the professional class in the first place. The Cooper-Fitch salary data and the Hayes Gulf Compensation and Benefits Report had both shown for 2 consecutive years that real wages for mid-level professionals were effectively flat or declining when adjusted for housing costs. At the same time, the Dubai Land Department data showed record off-plan sales and a construction pipeline that was adding supply at rates that analysts at Knight Frank and Jones Lang LaSalle had flagged as potentially creating oversupply in the mid-range and luxury segments within 2 to 3 years. A city building aggressively for a population whose willingness to stay was already quietly eroding before the war began. And then there is the brand itself. Dubai sold certainty. That was the product. Not just sunshine and tall buildings and zero income tax, but the specific and powerful idea that of all the places in the world where you could put your money, your company, and your family, this was the one that would not surprise you badly. The brand was stable ground in an unstable region. When missiles began landing close enough to create debris incidents in the city, that brand proposition did not just weaken, it inverted. Every intercepted drone, however successfully neutralized, was a data point that contradicted the foundational promise. Analyst Trita Parsi, commenting on the ceasefire, described the last 40 days as a conflict that had become, in his words, an absolute disaster, and argued that what ended was not a strategic success, but a mutual need for an exit. That framing matters for Dubai because it means the ceasefire is not a resolution, it is a pause, and investors, tourists, and highly mobile professionals understand the difference between a resolved conflict and a paused one. Here is what I think is likely and what I think is genuinely uncertain. On the recovery side, some things will move fast. Flights will resume. Hotel prices will stabilize. Logistics will normalize over the course of weeks and months. The fundamental attractiveness of Dubai's infrastructure for trade, logistics, and financial services does not disappear because of 40 days of conflict. The city is genuinely good at those things. That is real, and it matters. On the other side, the tourism recovery is a different and much longer project. Historical Gulf geopolitical shocks typically produce disruption periods of 4 to 12 weeks before bookings begin recovering. But those were shocks in which the perception of Dubai as a safe distance from conflict was never genuinely challenged. This time, the smoke was visible from luxury hotel windows. The drone debris was found in industrial areas of the city. The psychological shift from safe paradise to conflict-adjacent zone is a shift that does not reverse on the day a ceasefire is announced in Islamabad. It reverses when people feel ready to trust again. And that timeline is measured in months or years, not in news cycles. The property market is even more complex. Physical prices held through the conflict far better than equity markets suggested. But the confidence of the international buyer, the person sitting in London or Mumbai or Frankfurt deciding whether to commit to an off-plan apartment in a city that just showed it could be reached by Iranian missiles, that confidence has a longer recovery curve than any of the financial instruments tracking it. And the structural questions, the ones about permanent residency, about the salary-to-cost ratio for the professional class, about what the experience of the last 40 days does to the mental model of people who were already beginning to reconsider their relationship with Dubai before the first missile was launched, those questions are still entirely open. Dubai has come back before. The 2008 crash, the population contraction in 2020. The recovery afterward was real and documented. The city is not collapsing in the way that some of the more sensational coverage of this moment has suggested. But recovery and transformation are not the same thing. And the version of Dubai that emerges from this is going to be asked to answer questions that the pre-war version was able to defer indefinitely. Whether it answers them honestly and whether the answers it gives are enough for the people who are deciding right now where to put their next decade, that is the real story. And the ceasefire, for all the genuine relief it brings, does not write that story. If you have lived in Dubai, or if you had it in your plans and this changed something for you, I want to know what the calculation looks like now. Tell me in the comments. Because the clearest picture of what is actually happening in this city has always come from the people inside it. And if this kind of deep analysis is what you come here for, you know what to do.